All right, before we send case, we have a content warning form, so could both competitors and both judges also fill it out? That'd be great. I'm sending it in the email chain now. All right, so. So to like, yeah.
Oh, I just read the ballot. Yeah, no words.
Just waiting for a couple more responses to make sure both competitors and both judges fill it out. All right, in some cases now. You guys we'll get to start. All right, so you guys good. All right. All right. Everyone ready?
Yep.
Perfect. My time will begin.
Now, contextualized housing discrimination. Despite recent efforts, Freedom 15 reports that annually 4 million people experience discrimination in the rental housing market. Social media has made it worse trying to rise that digital redlining become a new frontier of discrimination as social media platforms use personal data to target ads based on protected traits. Luckily, the issue is fiscal. Still, in 21 rights in Section 230 creates a disincentive to care rather than incentive to self-regulate, holding companies responsible with shift some of the cost of unlawful content on the entities best equipped to prevent them. Also, 9 further is that the CDA has turned the internet into a hotbed for housing discrimination by allowing interactive community services to circumvent Section 3604. There are methods of monitoring posts to ensure housing advertisements are valid. FHA, such as automated screening and user-based notification programs, independently. Section 230 prevents plaintiffs from even having a defendant, right? So that anonymous messages may lead victims of housing discrimination without a defendant. Overall, Ross concludes that the CDA has eviscerated the FHA and has left housing victims of housing discrimination without a form of recovery. The impact is improving health. Yang 17 writes that discrimination in housing markets may force individuals to live in undesirable areas or homes to expand housing, having exposure to chemicals and protective diseases. Perceived discrimination in housing markets may increase psychological stress and eventually lead to poor overall health. Consider to cartels. Root on 23 writes that cartels will grow by 26% by 2027. Social media is facilitating cartel strength. 6 at 23. Mexican drug cartels are using Twitter to recruit social media strength. These cartels by enhancing operation capabilities, provide opportunities to facilitate drug sales. Affirming assault Section 230 is allowing for complacency. Match 20. Social Section 230 protects internet companies from liability for legal content. Companies have turned a blind eye, blaming their inability to keep up with legal content of algorithms when the real issue is profits. Drug sales fuel conflict. Boarding no data raises drug profits can fund civil wars and increase the risk of state failure. Mexican instability still is over. Armies 11. Cartels effectively destabilization to threaten labors. The effects of March post-drug war becomes a Central American conflict. Lindsay 13. Latin American instability provides opportunities for major rival states proposing to the region divert attention from distant theaters overseas. Direct war with China, Russia, and the Americas leads to extinction. Lindsay 13. Beijing, Moscow would establish base in the Latin American conflict would lead to direct confrontation with nuclear armed powers. Leads to extinction. Star 15 writes the nuclear war would cause a post-war environment too cold, too dark to grow food. Catch 3 is terror. GCI 23 finds that text more deadly lethality rising by 26%. Social media is driving. Ensure 23 quantifies that Instagram and Facebook play a key role in radicalizing and mobilizing about 90% of terrorist actors, a 40% increase. To which 22 writes that without Section 30, platforms face liability and take content down to avoid the possibility of facing a lawsuit. Privilege 18 more furthers that a greater liability regime cut off a key lifeline for ISIS and other terrorist organizations exempted from Section 230 would increase incentives for ISPs to innovate and develop new solutions to avoid liability by combating the threat of terror on social media. There are two impacts. The first is terror attacks. USDT 23 finds that terrorist attacks cause structural violence as groups like ISIS commit numerous abuses of human rights and violations of international humanitarian law against women and children, including involving killing, maiming, and sexual violence. Two is state collapse. It appears group War 18 contextualized that ISIS used social media to mobilize 40,000 foreign nationals from 110 countries, increasing internet access in both Africa and the Middle East means that ISIS also has a new pool through social media to be recruited to join its effort to gain control of lost territory. The importance of social media in protecting violent extremist propaganda and recruiting foreign fighters is well documented. The Michelle 18 furthers that failed states with biggest generators of humanitarian crises and refugees, they engineer to resume stability in neighboring states, enable access to weapons being stolen from collapsing military facilities. Instability causes actors to come and causing extinction. Avery 20 writes that Russia and China may also be drawn into a general war in the Middle East, and nuclear weapons would be used either intentionally or accident risk calculation, making large areas of the world uninhabitable. Global famine would result. Because that's forest trafficking. American social media platforms increasing trafficking charges 22 residents in 2020 identified a 125% increase in recruitment into trafficking through Facebook and 95% increase in Instagram. Traffickers use social media to scour and then use online job boards and employment websites to recruit them through false advertisements. Sylvain 21 finds that companies have a disincentive to moderate, even if they could or reasonably anticipate that consumers would use their services to harm. Section 30 disincentivizes moderation. Furthermore, Steinberg 22 writes the interpretation of Section 30 meant that companies were not liable for trafficking in the course of routinely dismissed cases. Status quo reforms are insufficient. Steinberg 22 writes that Foster requires plaintiffs to show the defendant participate in an adventure with traffickers. Companies merely avoid action that constitutes participation in a venture with wrongdoers. Luckily, affirming creates incentives to moderate content. Steinberg continues that would have immediate and significant impact. Companies would be liable. Section 230 immunity would no longer extend to these cases. This would significantly broaden the liability for human trafficking. Any and all safety measures are key. UNODC 21 notes that the internet is the most common place where victim recruitment takes place. Prevention is key. The harms of trafficking extend beyond human rights violation and inhumane conditions to cause intergenerational traumas. Alta 17 writes that the symptoms of depression and PTSD are reported by 78% of women survivors.
Okay, I think this. Cool. Everyone ready? We negate. First is framing. Prioritize dismantling structural violence. First, traditional risk calculus fails to address invisible violence. Winter and Lane 99 write that direct violence is horrific, but its brutality gets our attention. We notice and respond to it. Structural violence is invisible, embedded in ubiquitous social structures and seemingly ordinary. Cognitive processes divide people into in-groups and out-groups. Those outside lie outside our scope of justice. Thus, we must flip our decision calculus to prioritize those out-groups. Richard 96 finds policymakers should look to society's most vulnerable. Fear of catastrophes leads policymakers to battle dramatic but statistically less threatening hazards while accepting more harmful but more mundane hazards. Second, structural violence accumulates perpetually, outweighing traditional afflictions. Nixon 11 explains that violence that occurs gradually is dispersed across time, not viewed as violence at all. We need to engage violence that is neither spectacular nor instantaneous, its repercussions playing out across staggered casualties, underrepresented in strategic planning. Slow violence is exponential, fueling long-term situations where conditions for life increasingly degrade. Thus, contention one is abortion access. Despite state bans, the number of legal abortions have increased due to online information assistance. Miller and Sanger Katz 23 finds that after the Supreme Court ended the constitutional right to abortion, total legal abortions increased. There were large increases in places where abortions remain legal, driven by a surge of publicity about ways to get abortions, resulting in more access to abortion for women traveling. Only 230 can protect against invasive state laws. Metzer 22 confirms that the legislators have turned their attention to banning online information sharing on the issue. Proposed laws criminalize aiding abortion on the internet. Section 230 is a crucial line of defense for keeping abortion information online. It protects platforms against litigation under any state legislation. Without it, Holland and Greer 22 find that online platforms will face a debilitating onslaught of lawsuits without 230 to get dismissed quickly. They'll become enormously expensive even for the largest platforms. Extremists are litigious. Platforms will race to the bottom and comply with laws restricting access to information about abortion. The asked policies of information limitation are a form of structural violence, and Nandagiri 20 writes that abortion access occurs under conditions of structural violence. Policies that limit access operate in systems that don't provide women-centric care and entrench cis heteropatriarchies. The sustained lack of information channels reproduce violence felt in abortion experiences. Overall, Olive 22 confirms that a total ban on the procedure could increase pregnancy-related deaths up to 33% for Black women. System that restricts access to abortion care cycles more Black and brown women into a system that is already failing them. Contention 2 is activism. Social media allows oppressed groups to circumvent political gatekeeping. Rodriguez and Brody 23 writes that the internet is particularly important for people historically excluded from the halls of power. It enables circumvention of traditional gatekeepers. Modern civil rights movements have benefited from reducing gatekeeping on social media. Additionally, scope is key to amplifying advocacy. Readerbolt 20 explains that the efficiency of social media is key to organizing movements. Communication among large geographically distant populations can happen more quickly than ever before. A critical role in galvanizing protesters. However, the affirmative limits activism for two reasons. First is moderation bias. Increased liability would lead to broad moderation. Rodriguez and Brody 23 finds that without Section 230, online platforms would minimize the risk of liability for illegal content by engaging in heavy-handed, cost-effective censorship instead of careful review. Increased censorship seeks to evade liability, would further silence diverse perspectives. This happens through algorithmic bias. Jackson 23 confirms that algorithmic content moderation is cost-effective relative to human moderators. Tools extracting patterns necessitate normalization of practices, which leads to ineffective identification among marginalized communities, reported higher than privileged groups. This bias stifles activist movements. Jackson furthers that because activists often identify with at least one marginalized group, erroneously removing content stunts movements, hampers representation, and silences individuals. Second is protecting against backlash. 230 protects activist speech, which upsets status quo powers, which empirically be proven to be the target of defamation suits. Hughes et al. 23 writes that Section 230 ensures internet platforms need not suppress marginalized voices in favor of dominant voices less likely to offend majority sensibilities. Defamation lawsuits were a strategy to blunt criticism from northern press of violent reactions to demands for equal rights. Section 230 preserves an environment where speech by marginalized voices can flourish. For example, Armijo 23 explains that the Me Too campaign permitted thousands of victims to speak out, often against powerful men. The movement led to legal reform. Social movements that encourage public accusations of wrongful conduct inevitably permit defamation liability. Without 230, Me Too would not have had the impact it had because alleged harassers, powerful and resource, would silence them by threatening platforms with liability for defamation. Overall, awareness and visibility created by activism is critical to dismantling structural violence. Ansel 21 concludes that to speak against the forces of structural violence requires making the invisible visible. When Black Lives Matter activists descended on Ferguson, they made invisible suffering visible to the country and the world, furthering that without them social change cannot happen. Leaders pressured by community activism begin to acknowledge equity is important. A national movement is emerging. For all these reasons, we
First question. Of course. All right. One starts. Yeah. Can you explain your backlash link?
Yeah, so that's just basically that, like, when movements like Me Too target powerful individuals could, absent 230, could then sue for defamation, and to avoid those litigation costs, social media companies will just shut that down.
So social media companies will restrict any speech that is
possibly defamatory
because they have legal liability.
Yes.
Your question.
All right. So how do cartels, for example, usually recruit on social media? Like, how does that work?
They have ads and they have like posts about the lifestyle, the money.
Right. They essentially they make videos kind of like flexing how much money they have from the wealth gained through cartels, right?
Not just that, they like increase connections by creating groups on social media.
Sure. So is any of that illegal?
The thing the stuff that they post, like stuff like drug trading and drug trafficking, is illegal.
I don't think it is, right? Especially when the main way that they do it,
you can't smuggle drugs into the United States.
You can play videos of you with drugs and play videos of you flaunting all the wealth that you've gained through cartels. You can't
play videos of you illegally smuggling drugs into the United States.
I'm pretty sure you can, right? And also the main way that
breaking a law. So you get.
The thing is, doing that is illegal. Posting videos of it is not, right? And especially things like flaunting their wealth, right? Like hanging out in their mansion.
If you are posting a video of you doing something illegal, that flags it for illegal activity, and the companies would be liable.
Wait. How is that? If
you're doing something illegal, then you can be sued.
No, but the thing is, they would be liable for what their users are posting, right?
If it's videos, connections of drug trafficking,
their wealth, and doing that is not illegal, then what litigation
selling drugs, the selling of drugs on social media, the sales of drugs, continuing selling drugs on social media is legal.
Wait, but your argument is not about them selling drugs on social media. It's about them recruiting, which does that
through drug sales too. Drug sales and recruitment. Okay. On your argument about like moderation bias, right? So how inaccurate are these AIs? Like if there's like 8 posts about starting a movement, how many of those are getting taken down?
I mean, I can't give you like a specific ratio out of 8, but we'd say like pretty inaccurate, right? Especially when companies are incentivized to be as cautious as possible to like maximally avoid litigation.
Okay, so like let's say that 10 people of a minority group post about a social movement that they're starting. How many of those posts get taken down?
I don't know, 7.
Okay, so if we have like, I'd say that's pretty generous because I'm sure your AI evidence doesn't say it's like only 30% effective. But what we would tell you is insofar as you have like 3 people posting and people can just keep on reposting that stuff, how does that not spread to the masses?
Wait, if they keep reposting it, then all of that would be taken down too.
It wouldn't all be taken down because every 3 out of 10 gets through. So you have 3 people that gets a post through that perpetuates and spreads to millions of people, and you have another 3 who post it, who pick up that story from the 3 people who posted.
And the more they post, the more
sure, the more can get taken down, but the more continues to go up still.
Sure.
Order's gonna be, I'll send a doc. Order's gonna be weighing like on the framing level and then down case.
I'm just follow that at the top of C1.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me send the doc. I should get that, we think, but if I don't, I'll cut after. Cool, sent. Let me know when you'll get it. Cool. Time.
Wait, hold on. Pull it up. All right, you got it.
Everybody good? Great.
On framing, one, everything links in housing discrimination massively perpetuates Black Americans now within scope because it affects tens of millions of Americans every year, outweighing any tangible benefit from their first or second cartels and terror. Also linked cartels with the worst structural violence record, they brutally murder millions for these 2 arguments either in the developing world where no checkbacks exist. For example, organizations exist in the U.S. to help with abortion access and stopping racism. Always on scope that affects millions more than the rapid because it's global third for trafficking their argument because of intervening actors actually step up for issues like abortion, racism, the top 5 level issues with empirically trafficking and politicians ignore it, go to abortion. 1, no link abortion amendments violate other state amendments of the First Amendment, Paragraph 21 rights of the Texas Amendment contradict the mandates of the Texas legislative platforms could be required to take both on and leave off information. The First Amendment should also back subtext and social media law clearly violates the First Amendment right. Second, turn on social media has been used to increase the spread of misinformation along 23 rights of the perfect storm of factors driven an abortion epidemic runs to exacerbate maternal mortality. The misinformation obstructs the patient's ability to form their healthcare decisions. Patients may conduct a self-managed abortion, cut the card there. Appealing 230 Salt and Shield 23 finds that platforms are paying without editorial responsibility, liability, push them towards responsible, pushing towards less algorithmic with questionable majority of economists surveyed agree that imposing stronger legal liability on platforms reduce disinformation. So there's no link in person networks all backward. 23 rights and abortion rights groups are expanding the network of staff dedicated to helping women find abortion improvements of money to cover costs of clinics and funds that often rely on a system of coordination. Abortion funds double the size of the case. Management team fourth California law means that companies face liability if they restrict content and comply with CNN 22 rights that making it illegal for Silicon Valley giants to hand over personal information abortion seeking to state authorities. Companies would put business in a difficult position having to pick sides that the implication is that companies would choose the politically popular option or restrict abortion content in the face of current consequences in Texas for 50 which is affirming reduced harassment about speech part 19 but the platforms benefit monetarily from popular content is often also and offensive to groups with less power such as women under Section 230's financial incentive favoring all hate speech and the impact of physical harm to win 23 rights that hate speech can cause high hate crime victims of hate speech face mental health issues such as PTSD and depression. 6 go to C2. On social movements. 1, top shelf, you can turn in social media driven protests are by link 13 finds a social media driven protest called the boom bust cycle where these protests garner much support. They're literally translated classical electoral change to implications. A, other methods solve factor better. For example, public forums or in person where the mouse solve their arguments better. But B, this functions as a term because empirically online social movements leads to complacency, which is empirically why. So Semi 21 finds that during the era of strength of social media giants use the opportunity to brand themselves for political activism. Social media actually limited collective action and political activism cut the card there. 2nd, cross-apply misinformation on abortion. Misinformation surrounding social movements gets spread. For example, BLM is a riot group which empirically hurts movements in the long term, causing massive backlash. Go to algorithmic the bias warrant. 1, there's no impact false positive expedited appeals that cap 21 rates in almost all large platforms offer appeal system information operation appeal system after appeal. YouTube established higher status to NGOs and used to efficiencies demonstrated reports are prioritize. 2nd, backlash solves. DL Campo continues that in response to the increase in automation and representment during COVID, YouTube suspended the strike system. YouTube reincorporated significant human resources and extended the moderation. 3rd, platforms are over moderating public backlash and PR for removing lawful content to get them to reform back to their algorithms are getting better now. Federal regulation ensures that even no one finds bias and algorithms. Regulators are essential to solving the problem of algorithmic bias. Federal Trade Commission for the Drug Administration regulatory framework are good source for designing new camps and L21 finds that content moderation not being applied equally groups of users experience groups including transgender PI and black people. Participants to remove content was frequently related to racial or justice. Jackson concedes that these racist algorithms are already being implemented in the status quo. It's terminally not unique. Black Americans get hyper taken down regardless of offering the warranting is simple. Their evidence concludes that these companies have institutional racism that gives them the incentive to create these algorithms and to implement them regardless. On backlash. One, public pressure works both ways. Two, warrants that there's way more support for BLM. Me Too votes against them, even if they're targeted by the Get Pissed. The vast majority of users and media outlets were behind them. The well-funded organizations like the ACLU and BLM organizers would push back at the corporate executives accused of harassment government they impeding the organization messaging campaign. Second, the defamation warrants overwhelm their solvency. Even a platform can't be sued. Individuals still can be a person accusing a rich man of sexual harassment is still able to be silenced for the truth from seeking the defamation lawsuit. They can unfortunately their link takes out their need to there's no link at platform getting sued for defamation by someone accused of doing something sexist or racist would be good for companies like Twitter brand and the PR benefits for a high profile defamation suit where they look like the good guys, which would outweigh any cost. Fourth, defamation doesn't work against elites and they've been able to weather and canceling campaigns lose traction too fast, which means any change that they talk about an impact level doesn't happen. The top stays even when call outs happen.
You mark stuff, right?
Yeah, I'll mark the cards.
You sent a mark doc.
Yeah.
I do that.
Yeah, it's good now. Okay.
Okay. I'll let you know I did.
Every response was read, it's just some of the highlighting. But I fixed the highlighting.
Actually, doing this response.
I got it. All right.
Oh, it's the same as the
second one.
I think you guys have. Yeah. You sent. Okay, I think we just got it. We're gonna start that now. All right, that was 135. We have 125 left. Send a doc in that case. What's that? Okay. Okay. Perfect. It's going to be framing our case their case. All right. Everyone's good. On the framing, none of their Lincolns have comparative weighing on them. All they say is that their arguments affect millions of people, so do ours, and they obviously affect marginalized people too. We would say that activism can solve for all of the arguments they talk about, because if we can actually take out the root cause of these structures that they talk about. For example, the reason why we have housing discrimination is because of racism in the first place. If we can take down those structures through activism, we're solving the root cause, they're just solving a symptom. On abortion, first they say it violates the First Amendment, but the First Amendment doesn't apply to inciting a crime, and their evidence is only about one law written in Texas, doesn't apply overall. Second, they say misinformation on abortion is bad. Misinformation is not illegal, and those suits are easily dismissed. Third, they say in-person networks solve. They obviously can't reach nearly as many people as online networks. Fourth, they say California law prohibits this. That's one state. We would say it definitely doesn't apply to the other 49. Fifth, they say that people will be harassed, but again, that's protected by the First Amendment. On activism, on our first link about moderation. First, they say that social media is bad for activism. Number one, activists can use both social media and movements on the ground. Then they say that there are false positives, but we would say that solving for these false positives, which is what their evidence talks about, requires people to actually report them to the company, which happens very rarely. People tend to be pretty lazy. Second, they say YouTube is allocating resources to solve for these bias algorithms. Obviously, that it's not solving. Like YouTube can say that they're allocating as much money as they want, but it has not solved the issue. Third, they say that regulation solves. Their evidence says it would be important to solve, not that they are. Fourth, they say that they say that this stuff is already all being removed and that they're already implementing algorithms. We would say it's way worse when they have to fully rely on those algorithms, which they would do if they had to over moderate everything and not have individuals involved in the process, which is what they would have to do post Section 230. On backlash. First, they say public pressure. Our argument is not about public pressure. It's about defamation lawsuits. Second, they say they can sue the individuals, but you can't track down every single individual who's done something, whereas suing the platform is very easy. Third, they talk about PR. Our argument has nothing to do with PR. And fourth, they say that defamation hasn't worked in the past. Defamation lawsuits are obviously an incentive for companies to take down this content, which is why we'd say they've done in the past. Do you want me to read this? Yeah. The WHO 20 evidence, which is written about their evidence, also says that as digital activism continues, there's no sense that the movement is unclear about its aims or that it might collapse, and that digital activism has empirically worked. Go to their case. On C1, first, companies are already liable for discrimination because it's a federal crime and the Section 230 does not apply. Brandon 23 explains the Section 230 has exceptions, including no effect of criminal law. That's why companies have already removed discriminatory ad systems after lawsuits. For example, Smoker 23 finds the Meta was sued for discrimination and entered a settlement. Cut the card there. Second, Section 230 doesn't protect housing discrimination. Genic 23 finds that Section 230 does not apply to platform content that falls outside the publication of others' content, such as discriminatory targeting of ads for houses. Cut the next card. Third, turn it. Increased moderation. Actually, skip that turn. On C2. First, there's no solvency. Sellers and buyers adapt. Atkins 22 finds the drug sellers will change their tactics based upon content moderation. The worst case scenario for a drug seller, unless you get your post taken down, you just put one back up. Other users may find those drugs through simple internet search. Second, turning. Repealing 230 but undermine addiction recovery. Hampton 21 finds that 230 carve-outs undermine access to life-saving resources, mandating takedowns of broad categories of content, forcing vulnerable populations. A platform outweighs on a free rack addiction is the root cause of demand for drugs, whereas they are trying to address one way of finding those drugs, which is a symptom. Third, turn it. Over censorship hinders legitimate discussions of research and actually skip that turn. On C3. First, their share evidence may have been published in 2023, but it is specific to the role of Instagram and Facebook in terror attacks of 2016. Since then, Clipper 21 finds that efforts to remove terrorist content cause a dispersal of extremist content on a constellation of different platforms, including that the bulk of terrorist content is on one small platform, not social media. Even if one platform is taken down, a dozen more will pop up to replace it. Second, all their link evidence is specific to an exception of 230 for terrorism, but that's already in effect. Brandon 23 finds that Section 230's exemptions, including no effect in criminal law, Anti-Terrorism Act makes terrorism a criminal law. On C4. First, it's not protected. Johnson 21 finds that Section 230 does not provide internet companies with absolute immunity and no longer applies to sex trafficking law. Second, repealing Section 230 would eliminate reporting systems, massively increasing human trafficking. Magnet 17 finds the reforms serve as a disincentive for companies to maintain and develop robust protection and reporting systems because they will be held liable for what they know. This outweighs in two ways. One, on scope, not all victims of trafficking have the tools to get videos taken down, but reporting systems help everyone. And second, on time frame, these reforms would help take down the videos before they got traction versus reactively taking down once they get sued. Cut the last response here. The marked doc is sent.
Let's see what we get.
Sounds good.
All right, cool, yeah. Yeah, dude. All right. Time starts.
Yes, if we're gonna make there, you're
That's one point.
reset,
Sure.
so I can,
Yeah. You can have the first question.
uh, let's talk about. Can you explain your second link again on C2? I still don't, actually, better question than that.
Okay.
So if you're conceding that people in these movements don't work because the things that they target can just weather it, what's your link into your impact?
The problem is that we didn't concede that. The WHO evidence that I read says that the movement is gaining traction and that it's not going to collapse. And
That's
number
not the
two,
response though.
yeah, no, but that's directly responsive to what you're saying, right? We're saying that, sure, like, I guess which specific response is this? Like,
The last response.
so the last response on which are activism?
Yeah,
The one that you read on backlash?
Yeah.
Here, let me pull that up. Yeah, your response is that defamation lawsuits empirically like don't work to stop these companies. But you've conceded like in every warrant on your case that when there's more defamation lawsuits, companies have a greater incentive to take this type of content down. And so obviously that means that post-app, when they're getting a flood of lawsuits over this activist content, they're going to take it down, correct?
sure.
Okay, you can, can I have a question?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Let's see. Let's talk about your argument about cartels. So your impact evidence about Mexican state collapse, what year was it written?
I think 21.
I'm pretty sure it was written in 2011, right? I think
Which
that's
one?
the Jones evidence. I can pull up your case, but
Okay, sure.
considering that your evidence
I mean,
says,
I don't know if that's,
yeah, here, I can verify. Considering that your evidence says, yeah, it's from 2011, it's the Amy's evidence. Sure. Considering that it says that there would be a state collapse in Mexico 13 years ago, and it hasn't happened yet, why would it happen now?
it says that if cartels continue to strengthen, there's gonna be a collapse, and cartels are continuing to strengthen.
I would say it says cartels' effect will be destabilization, which could threaten neighbors. The
Yeah,
effects
I'd say they already are
Mexico's, yeah.
destabilizing the country like pretty badly.
So then, considering that your uniqueness is from 13 years ago, why has the impact not happened? Like you're
collapse
half,
takes
right?
time. It doesn't happen immediately.
Okay, so
For example,
if it's not
Afghanistan's
gonna happen
collapse
in-
took what, 30 years?
If it's not going to happen in 13 years, when is it going to happen?
We have evidence that we cut that says it's gonna happen by 2025. It's either 25 or 27.
Okay, you can send that after cross if you'd like. You can have a question.
So do you want it or not?
Yeah, you can send it after. I don't
Okay.
want to waste your time doing cross.
I mean, sure. There's like 10 seconds, 1 minute.
It doesn't matter. Whatever you want.
Could you all send them back if it's not in the doc for tracking?
Yeah, I got you. It's done.
Alright, cool. Once I get it, we'll start working.
Yep.
Alright, cool. Alright, we'll start.
Nah, it's fine. No, I'm still typing. I don't know. You have the hands. If I get time. Probably.
Alright, cool. That was 125. 245, sorry, 245 is, wait, yeah, 245 is, so we have 15 more.
Go very fast.
So, word for word, yeah. Alright, it's gonna go handling the turn on C2 on our case, down C3, C4, weighing at the bottom of each case, then onto their case. Does that make sense? I'm good.
Yep.
Alright, cool.
Yeah, can you go over that one more time? Sorry.
So starting on the cartel turn on C2,
All right.
and then extending and frontlining C3 and 4, weighing at the bottom of each.
Okay. So 2, 3, 4, reverse.
And there's.
There's.
Yep.
Cool.
Alright, is that all right?
Yeah.
The time will begin. Now, on the turn of cartels, people are going to be addicted. They don't actually have, they themselves have to go into recovery in order for this to happen. What we would tell you is that people are not going to recovery right now, which means it's not actually solving any of the arguments. Then, second protection for terrorism, terrorism increasing in size, closure events, and 9% attack, recruiting efforts through social media, and massive scope of recruiting go classical, do offensive with security companies would be liable. We take down terrorist propaganda to avoid liability. Create trans companies would then invent new ways to invest in more resource to combat terrorism. The impact is ethnic minorities. What we tell you is that terrorist groups like ISIS do any harm to structural violence and human rights violations to people. They reach a response first. They talk about the sheriff, talking about 2016 focus on small internet platforms now, but we tell you sure they may be trying to take down some of the content. There's still a lot on these big platforms. There's still like these headings happening on Twitter and Facebook. That means it's still happening on a large scale according to the scope. Then they try to say that all of our link is about exception to section 230, but their argument is about federal law of anti-terror, but it's very hard to prove anti-terror. It's easier to prove harms of like actual violence, which is not protected under section 230's exemption, which they would be liable for. Go to the in that way. First on prerequisite, we would tell you that it would stop activism as far as terrorist activity. It would target these actual activism in the first place that actually stops it. Then go to C4 and terror. Terror has like 125% after being increasing on Facebook and 95% on Instagram. So it finds that companies have a disadvantage or moderates, they have no liability. Cyber is like courts have routinely dismissed cases constantly. If section 230 is appealed in union with longer extends to these cases, and companies would be held liable. UNOD finds that the internet is the most common place for trafficking occurs, and also finds suppression of BT store reports of 78% of women's private. Sources tell you that it's not protecting trafficking anymore. It's talking about sexual foster. They can see the spike inside case that tells you sexual foster doesn't allow for it makes it only worry about facilitating. Facebook is merely not facilitating, just hosting, which means that they're not liable under sexual foster. But secondly, trying to say that it's going to decrease reporting system. Reporting systems don't work right now. Insofar as the largest place of trafficking is online right now, because the reporting systems don't work. Also, they'd have to report in the first place. How does someone who's already traveled report the system in the first place? There's no way to actually do that. Going to the WAG, they cold can see intervening actors without a second rebuttal. That's clean drop. They don't let them respond to the next page. What we tell you is that there are no intervening actors that are looking to try and solve for this trafficking. There's intervening actors looking to solve for things like abortion and these activism. But secondly, they try to tell you that activism is like the prerequisite for stuff like trafficking. But we would tell you that no one's solving for trafficking right now. There are no protests, and there's no one who's looking out for, which means that activism don't solve for this. But also, on probability, what we tell you is the largest amount of demand happens on trafficking. That
Going to their case. On abortion, one issue kind of mishandled the first response. It's not about the First Amendment, where evidence indicates that it starts like states like Texas that have to take down abortion information physically cannot because they have contradictory laws about protecting all speech. They created when Republicans' information got taken down, which is why Texas tried to remove any abortion laws, but they lost because Section 230 contradicts it. But secondly, extended person networks solve back better. They say online workers work, but they can see the analysis of evidence, which finds that people inevitably have to go through in-person forms regardless to find transportation and funding for abortion, so the scope doesn't decrease at all. Then under first thing on C2, they can see the analysis on first response expediting appeals. Our argument is that even if the post unrightfully taken down, companies like YouTube have massive steps and track backers so they can repost it, which solves the problem. But two, they also can see the link evidence which finance systems are getting better in the status quo because people are using larger data sets and won't overly target Black communities because these companies don't want to. But three, they can see the shop response, which finds that public forums and word of mouth laws with the same spread of moves about social media, which is why they can indict criminality. Then on their link too, but what we tell you that it's good for these social media companies to have these facilitators because they won't actually take it down. They try to tell you it's not about PR, but no, it is about PR. And so far, those companies get good PR for these lawsuits of defamation happening. That means that they'll keep it up in the first place. But secondly, it's only specific to one movement of defamation. It's not specific to all movements, which is not correct.
We have 125 left.
I'll send in the chain the text of the responses in case.
Okay. I guess we'll wait for that.
It's on the C1, it's like 1, and then
Okay.
like 2 along.
It's everything except for the link to responses.
I just got it. All right, we have 125 left, starting now.
I think it's all your time.
That's time, yeah. Okay.
Okay, it'll start on the framing, and then it'll be our second contention, and then way. Cool.
Framing C2, cool.
Yeah. Both teams have conceded the Winter Lane framing that direct violence against our attention is always addressed, while structural violence is invisible because it's embedded in social structures that make it seem normal, and that thus we must flip our decision calculus to prioritize the most vulnerable communities. We're going for our second link about backlash. Repealing 230 makes companies liable to defamation claims for activist speech. This opens the door for more powerful actors to drown out social media platforms with expensive litigation, causing them to over-moderate and force activist content off of their platform. This would have been detrimental to social movements like Me Too and Black Lives Matter, who uniquely relied on the scope and reach of social media to gain the momentum that they did. Overall awareness and visibility created by activism is critical to dismantling structural violence because because they're what makes the invisible violence of structural violence visible. At the end of this round, they make two responses. The first is this top shelf response that word of mouth could have happened anyway, but they've conceded our evidence that the WHO evidence that BLM and Me Too only were able to have the spread that they were because they were able to have like this wide reach of scope because of social media, which is why the WHO evidence says that they're stronger than ever and adapting to like reaching out to people through this way. The second is that it doesn't matter because it creates positive PR, but there's no more why PR matters. They conceded that the massive cost of defamation lawsuits would literally be too much to handle, even if the largest social media platforms, which means that the cost benefit analysis means that they would take it down regardless. Those are the only two responses. This argument is essentially clean, and the weighing is very simple. They make two pieces of weight off of trafficking. One, that there's intervening actors, and second, that no one is solving for trafficking. Both of these are literally unwarranted. And there's obviously organizations right now that are pushing to address trafficking issues, but moreover, activism outweighs both of these and up layers for two reasons. Number one, on a prerequisite, because active movements are what actually push policy change that addresses the root cause of their issues. In a post-app world, if say politicians or CEOs that are complicit in trafficking can just sue those discussing those issues off their platforms, this is a clear detriment to those sorts of movements. And second, on scope, because our argument affects every single social issue that relies on social movement to be solved, whereas theirs is just about one or two. But then on their case, the defense is really clean. Go to terror. Number one, extend the Clifford evidence that says that because these social media sites don't want like terrorist activity on their sites because they view it as dangerous, they've taken it all down right now. Their one front line, there's still a lot of like terrorist recruiting, but their evidence is from 2016, which is 5 years before ours. Whereas our evidence says that right now, because they've been pushed off of these large social media platforms, they've been pushed to smaller, to like much smaller, less legitimate platforms. The implication is that when Section 230 is repealed and these smaller platforms are met with litigation and squashed, they can just be put back up again because of how small they are. So there's absolutely no offense coming off of the terror argument. But then on trafficking, we're going to go for the magic term, which says that with 230 in place, companies are willing to like put out reporting systems because they won't be held liable for any trafficking they find on their site. But in a post-app world, they won't do any of this reporting because they're afraid. They're afraid of like revealing the fact that there's trafficking going on their site, which they would be liable for. Their one front line is that this clearly doesn't work because how are people going to report if they're already trafficking? It's not about people who are being trafficked doing the reporting. It's about like people seeing trafficking happening and then that reporting it, which is a term that's essentially just conceded. But I would probably vote on the backlash argument. That has some pretty good weighing on.
Do the front one. Yeah. That's all.
Okay, you ready for Grant?
Yeah.
You can have the first question.
Let's talk about defamation.
Yep.
So your link is that defamation gets posted. Wait. If information is true, is it different defamation?
No, I got a better question.
Wait, can I answer that first question?
I don't.
I'll let Alex.
Don't even answer that question. Don't
Let
even
Alex
answer that
That's
question.
fine.
Don't even answer that question. How does backlash work for movements like other social movements like BLM? Like I get how backlash can work for like Me Too, but how does that work for like BLM and other social movements that are trying to create change?
For example, powerful actors and powerful organizations, and like for BLM, like police forces is probably one of those powerful organizations, can threaten defamation lawsuits. And in a world without 230, because companies no longer have legal protections for themselves against being held liable for that, they would have to take it down.
If we like really want to get into it, I think there's a lot of reasons why powerful actors have an incentive to like defend police forces, right? Like police forces are what like defend like very powerful people's property, right? So I think that there's many actors who have an incentive and the power to prevent like major structural change from happening.
Could we have a question?
Can you all send who?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Do we have a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Let's talk about. You want to go ahead and do that? Yeah. Let's talk about your argument about terrorism.
Yeah.
So, if you've conceded the evidence 5 years newer than yours, that all of these large social media sites have taken down terrorists.
So Clifford just says that they're trying to take down. It doesn't say it's taken down.
No, I mean it's written in the past tense, right? And it says that
it doesn't
because
say
of
it's
this.
taking down all the terrorists.
Yeah. It says that they're now on a constellation of new platforms in the past tense. The Clifford evidence is very clearly talking about
Even
something
if
that's
Clifford
already
says
happened.
there's two problems. First, even if Clifford says that someone's moving to small platforms, there is still large platforms, and large platforms have a lot bigger reach. But also, the small platforms would also be gone without Section 230.
Yeah, the problem is that you've conceded the like implication off the response that was in rebuttal and in summary that these small platforms, because they're so small, even if
That wasn't in rebuttal. That was
yes,
in
it was.
summary.
Look at
That
the
was in
doc.
summary. That was
No, that wasn't. Look at the doc. That was
no,
in
you
rebuttal.
like cut like half your talking on that.
Yeah, no, but I didn't
No,
cut that
no,
part
you
of
did.
Clifford.
Yeah, you did. You
No,
cut
no,
the
no, I
second
said
part,
even if
so-
one gets taken down, another pops up.
Yeah, but they all get sued, which means that none of them would exist, because how would you get, the
Yeah,
only
except
reason why you
another
would
can
have a
pop up.
platform, the only reason you'd have a platform is for profits. If you're not getting any profits, then there's no reason to keep up a platform.
Well, no, I would say these platforms
Because you
exist
just get
because
sued.
terrorists want to recruit on them, right?
Then no one would go to those tiny platforms that's owned by a terrorist.
Well, considering that in the status quo, all of this terrorist recruiting is already on the small platforms, if I were to concede what you
It's
just
not all
said,
on
and
the-
that no
it's
one
not
would-
all on the small
That's what
platforms.
Clifford says. Clifford says it's on a
It's trying to.
constellation of small platforms. If that's true, and what you just said is true, then that means people will never use these small platforms, and terrorists cannot recruit in the status quo, so you have no offense. You can have a question.
There's 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's fine.
I also sent leader hold, which is like the same point. I just remember the name.
Cool. We'll watch it. We'll get it. We'll start.
Sounds good. You guys have 15.
Sorry. No, you got it? Yeah. All right. Time starts now.
Okay.
You got one. It's all cut out with 4 rounds. So I'm gonna talk-
Yeah.
You're not gonna lost it once.
I'm not. I'm gonna do weighing first. Our case, their case.
My ears.
Pretty good. This round is coming down to weighing extended interviewing actors, but our evidence indicates that actors tirelessly step up for issues addressed on their case. For example, the ACLU with issues like discrimination, but nobody looked towards tracking this. A, policymakers don't prioritize it, and B, it's so well concealed that nobody steps up. Their only response is just that it's not warranted. This doesn't make any sense at all. What our evidence indicates that their impacts get solved from the root by a plethora of different actors, but nobody looks towards tracking or solves for it best. Go to their prereq weighing. They say that they upload their first warrant is that it pushes policymakers, but they have conceded that policymakers do not look to our policies around trafficking in the first place. That's the nuance of the intervening actors warranting, which responds to their first prereq. But the second warrant they give about scope, it's every social movement. That every social movement has those intervening actors. For example, the ACLU, which means they're not accessing the scope weighing. But secondly, do not let them access every single social movement. They only read 1 or 2. Also, the probability weighing is straight up conceded. What our evidence indicates that trafficking is being perpetuated massively right now, but you have no idea what social movements happen or if discrimination or discrimination decreases in their world because their impact extension is really shoddy. Go to trafficking extended. Contreras finds 125% increase in trafficking on Facebook and 95% on Instagram. So even tech companies have a disincentive to moderators. They have no liability time for forensic courts to dismiss trafficking cases costly if Section 230 really would no longer send trafficking cases into completely face massively liability. UNODC finds that internet is the most common place for trafficking occurs, all impacts depression and PTSD reported by 78% of women survivors. The XM1 response saying the reporting system will go away because they don't want to put awareness there. And they can see the first response, the reporting system don't work right now anyway. And so far as trafficking is the largest on social media and is increasing right now, but we also extend that people who are trafficked can't report themselves. They say other people who see it report. Our entire argument is that it is concealed so that people cannot see it. They don't do the reporting in the first place. Okay, do not then let them renew weighing or develop it more in second final. It's unfair to us to go to their case. Extend the same definition that they talk about the social change happens, i.e. via means like public forums and word of mouth and on the news. They say that WHO says that it only happens on social media. That's not what WHO says. Call the evidence. What WHO just says is that it is a mechanism, but our Tusemi evidence postdates and indicts it and finds that this is all lobbying. For example, the majority of the social movements, for example, the Arab Spring, happen in person, not via social media. It's terminal defense.
The order is going to
It's going to be the weighing. Be our case, then it's going to be their case. Is everyone ready? The weighing in this round is actually very simple. They've staked the round on a sentence that no one looks at human trafficking, but they've conceded from our summary that's entirely unwarranted and that there are organizations actively in place who are trying to combat human trafficking, which means we get access to all of our weighing. Number one, activism can address the root of human trafficking by creating new laws that actually stop human trafficking at its root rather than trying to solve for a symptom on social media. And number two, the scope weighing, that every single social issue can be solved through activism, whereas they only address one. Even if we don't name every social issue, our our argument is that activism as a force can solve for all of these social issues. We get access to all that weighing. Then they just say probability weighing because trafficking is happening now. Social movements are also happening now, which means this is not comparative. If we win our case, we win the round right there, extended. Repealing 230 makes companies liable to defamation claims for activist speech, which opens the door for more powerful actors to drown out social media platforms with expensive litigation, causing them to over-moderate and force activist content off their platforms. This would have been detrimental to social movements like Me Too and BLM, who relied uniquely on the scope and reach of social media to gain the momentum that they did. Overall awareness and visibility created by activism is critical to dismantling structural violence because they're what makes the invisible violence of structural violence visible. Their only response is straight through ink. It's essentially that we can like already use like word of mouth. Number one, they've conceded that these movements can use both social media and word of mouth, which is better. And two, they say that our WHO evidence doesn't say that it's working. Yeah, but our Wiederhole evidence does, which is the evidence Alex Huang was referencing in his summary and the evidence we sent to them. It says that right now social media movements are working and that they are the only ones that have the ability to get the scope of reaching enough people to actually create real change. At that point, our case is entirely conceded and we're winning the Wang, which means we're winning right there. But even then, you can pull the trigger for us on the MAGA turn. They've conceded that without Section 230, companies will no longer want to have reporting systems in place because they don't want to be held liable when, for example, they find that they themselves are having this content on their own platform, which means they would get rid of all reporting systems. They've conceded the Wang that reporting systems help everyone, whereas lawsuits only help a few people, which means we outweigh on scope. Their only response is that reporting systems don't work, entirely unwarranted. They've conceded that they are working right now, and obviously, like reporting and taking down this content is something that is good overall. Per their own case, it's game over for the nay.
Thanks, y'all. I really appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you for joining.
Good luck. Good luck in your subsequent debates.
Thanks for judging. Good luck, y'all. Does Jeff Miller read you guys do this?
We can like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, y'all are the real MVPs over here. Making all this happen. I'll be back to do my ballot.